My name is Jim Hightower. I'm VP of Business Development and Security with the Open Group. And thank you for joining the webcast today. We'll be introducing IT4IT. I will be joined by Dave Lounsbury with the Open Group and Stuart Alexander with Enterprise Architects. Dave, let me go ahead and make you the presenter. And feel free to take it away.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Welcome everybody to this presentation on IT4IT. First, I want to give folks a background on IT4IT and why we're doing this. A few years ago, a number of major IT consumers recognized the need to improve the efficiency of their IT operations and to really organize themselves so they could face the challenges of the demands being put on them by the diverse business units in their organizations. And to do that, they recognized they needed a new approach to improving their IT efficiency. And in doing so, they also wanted to make sure that they weren't locking themselves into any one particular solution. We all know that there are a lot of IT trends around, technology fads and things like that, but these people recognize the need to create a standard that spanned not only their needs, but also allowed them to get their IT services, software, and components from a large number of vendors. And the real driving cost of this was, in fact, always the dual cost or the dual objective of improving their operational capability in the IT world while controlling their costs so they can spend it on new products and services. And this is one of those areas where, you think IT, of course, has all the tools and processes they need to run their shop. But sometimes it's the case where the phrase we use is that the children have no shoes. IT focuses all its energy on delivering services to the line of business, but not always so much on its own software for running its own business. So that motivated these vendors and customers to come together to form the IT4IT forum under the Open Group. They did that. They were making good progress on their own, but they recognized that if they were going to get an open standard that was vendor neutral and headed enduring home, that they would need to actually bring it to a standards organization. They did that a couple of years ago, and I'll talk a little bit more about the timeline for IT4IT in a bit. But they have started that forum under the Open Group, and they are working very hard now to, we've released the standard, and we're working very hard now to make sure that that standard is available to the marketplace. So that's what IT4IT is about at a high level. I'll talk a little bit more about what's in the standard and the value propositions for all parts of the people who are in the IT support ecosystem to adopt the standard. So what is IT4IT? So the Open Group is a member-driven organization that helps organizations and businesses achieve their objectives through use of open standards. And so IT4IT, as it comes from the Open Group, is an Open Group standard that's a vendor-neutral and technology-agnostic operating model for IT, how IT operates the business of IT, and also a reference architecture for how the components that support that operating model will fit together and communicate. And for people who implement that operating model, it provides coherent capability to manage that business of IT from beginning to end, all the ways that IT works and interoperates with the business, so that they can operate more effectively and waste less money on internal operations and deliver more to the lines of business. We think that's critical because we see not only is there an area of fast change, but we see that a lot of approaches to solving similar problems in the IT world, and we want to make sure that there are standards that people can point to so that they can provide the components and also provide the people skills to actually work in that efficient way. And this is a standard that is not only based on current needs for IT operation, but we've also tried very deliberately to look forward to the really emerging model of the agile world based on cloud infrastructures and that really rapid delivery of IT services. Now, I mentioned we're a member-based organization, and that a group of people worked before they came to the Open Group. There were a number of founders, and you can see here we have major IT consumer organizations like Shell, IT supplier organizations like Hewlett-Packard, and consultancies who help them achieve their objectives, people like Accenture. We also have academic participation to help get them started. And those were the seed group who came to the Open Group to create the forum and create the enduring home for the standard. Since they joined the Open Group, they've made rapid progress, and you can see the chain here from September 2011 and the launch of the Open Group to 2014 to the point where we released the standard in 2015. So the first version of that IT4IT standard is out, and it's being actively evolved by the members, not only in terms of moving the standard forward, but also to creating the material for the supporting ecosystem, things like reference cards, and we're very actively working on creating a program by which people can be certified as proficient in IT4IT. And that's under the guidance, as always, of the members of the Open Group. There's been very rapid growth in the membership of the IT4IT forum, and I think now we're over 60 members, and you can see some of the others here, people like Armstrong Process Group, buyers like BP, ExxonMobil, and Origin Energy, suppliers like Microsoft, IBM, Capgemini as both a supplier and a consultancy. So very rapid growth in that area because there's people really developing a lot of interest in how to do this transformation. So that's the group. That's who we are. Now, how are we doing it, and what problem are we solving? These days, any business of any size really depends on IT to some extent, and many are dependent entirely on IT for their competitive business models. And you can think of many examples here like Amazon or Uber, who are primarily delivered through their IT interactions with the world. And of course, it is very reasonable these days for CIOs to expect to use their IT as a differentiator. But that's always been a point of friction between the people who are the business-oriented people and the people who have come up through the technology path. And we've probably all heard the phrase, business and IT don't speak the same language. And so here we've got, on one hand, the rising expectations of the business that they can use IT to be a business differentiator. And then the people who are in IT are struggling to both stay on top of technologies, deliver that value to the business, and actually, run their business in an efficient way so they can actually communicate to business in a business-like way. And so they're in a lot of stress. It's a tough position to be in, and they need a business model to be able to do that in an affordable, efficient, and business-like way. So I want to note that Gartner has captured this actually quite well in their analysis in the space, and I'll let people read this here. But the essence of this is that the IT functions companies are struggling to contain costs, and any money they spend on their internal operations is money that isn't being invested into new IT to help differentiate the business. And you can see here their estimate is that if we can, and you think about for a $1 billion IT budget, improvements in efficiency could be as much as 5 to 20% of your total budget. So you can do the math and see what that would mean to new investments in new programs and people to deliver that. Now, I mentioned the need, or the old saw about IT and business talking a different language. If you want to talk to business and talk to it in their business-like language, one of the best places you can go for that is you go to the source on business processes, Michael Porter. We've all seen the book Competitive Strategy from Michael Porter, and it talks about how you organize for a business. And really, one of the things you will see in IT4IT is that organization on a business-like way. And so let me show what's in IT4IT, and you see principally the major components of IT4IT that are presented in that standard are first an operating model, and that operating model is based on Porter's value chain concept that shows what the segments of the IT business are and how each step in that process adds value as the information flows through the business out to services that are delivered to the lines of business. Now, of course, having a business model or an operating model is a good start, but what you also need to achieve those efficiencies is the components that allow you to automate those processes for maximum efficiency and data models to know where you need to share information and of course specify the interactions between those systems. So the other thing you will see in the IT4IT standard is the reference model that was derived using enterprise architecture methodology, and of course we always look to TOGAF for that. And the model is in fact specified in the Open Group's Archimate modeling language. So we can take a little bit of look at that in a little bit of detail here on the next slide. We've got this sort of new viewpoint on how to run and deliver IT, and we look at the traditional IT value chains of plan, build, deliver, and run, and we've mapped those into value chain segments following Porter according to that traditional model. And so from an IT viewpoint, that means you look at the first view, the plan stage, where in IT4IT, that's the strategy to portfolio value stream. And that's where you think about how do you make the right investments so that you can have things in your IT portfolio that deliver what your business strategy needs. Second phase is the requirements to deploy a value stream, and that's about how you create and deploy quality services that are available to the lines of business for use. How you actually take your strategy, you've turned it into a portfolio, now you put things into that portfolio. One of the key concepts in IT4IT is that it's a service model, that it's demand-led, that when you put things into your portfolio, that your customers have a way to choose from a catalog or pull things out of the portfolio and deploy them for their business. So the next phase of that is the deliver phase, and in IT4IT, the request to fulfill value chain. And that is to provide that catalog of services for consumption to the user and give them a way that they can reach out and get those services when they need it. They don't have to start a new project or anything like that. They can just go and grab the services and make them work. And of course, once those services are deployed, well, they need to be kept up and running. The businesses come to rely on them. And so you need a way to make sure that they are up and running and delivering on their service level agreements. And that's captured in the last phase of IT4IT, which is called the detect to correct phase, which is when there's some anomaly, when the services aren't meeting the expectations or something's not working, that there's a mechanism by which that gets analyzed and responded to and fixed, both in terms of service restoration and in terms of long-term fixes, which may feed all the way back to the beginning. Now, we'll look at those in a bit more detail here on this next slide. And you can see this is now starting to show the meat of the IT4IT operating model. You see the four value streams there: strategy to portfolio, the requirement to deploy, the request to fulfill, detect to correct. And you'll see when you go into the IT4IT standards, by the way, I should mention, you can download from the Open Group Bookstore site, and I believe we'll provide a link for that later. You can see the functions that need to be delivered in each one of those stages, how you go from strategy to a service portfolio to demand and selection. I won't read these all. I want to get to the real heart of our presentation. And the steps that are needed, the key performance indicators for when you know you've actually achieved those steps, and the components of the architecture reference model that are needed to make that happen. So I won't go through all of these in detail. I do want to show you, however, a bit more. You can see here drilling down into moving from that value stream and operating model view of IT4IT into what is the actual components for the system of record. Now, one of the key things here is that this is not an implementation guide. This is an architecture reference model. And what we're trying to identify at this level is what are the capabilities that the systems need in order to fulfill that operating model and the interactions among them. So again, you see a fairly full set here, and you can see that they are mapped to the various phases in the value chain: strategy, portfolio, requirement to deploy, request to fulfill, detect to correct. So what are the capabilities you need from an IT perspective in order to deliver each one of those? You know, when you think about how you would procure this, it's very likely that you'll see people aggregating some of these capabilities into a single service or a single piece of software. Again, the essence here is, do you know you've got everything you need? So those are the capability level view, and of course we go beyond that to talk about the actual data items that need to be kept at each stage in order to know your what you're doing. Things like, for example, you know, your backlog, your portfolio backlog. You know, what do you still need to implement, and how that information needs to flow among the capabilities. Which capability needs to know about that backlog in order to move it from the strategy to portfolio planning stage into the implementation stage and required to deploy at the next stage, and so on. Now, I'm sure a lot of you know that this is an area where there's a lot of IT operational standards in the world. And one of the most important things, one of the key principles of the Open Group, is that when we create a new standard or a new model like this, that we make sure that we leverage existing standards. It's in nobody's interest that we create new standards from scratch. So where there are standards that are fit for purpose, we will reuse them. And IT4IT in particular has taken care to make use of the proven existing standards where they exist and are fit for purpose, and also to make it clear how it positions itself with those other standards. Because you don't want to say IT4IT is the one true approach to doing these things. We've got things like TOGAF, for example, which, and when you look into IT4IT, a key part of going from your business strategy to your portfolio is that you do enterprise architecture work. Well, TOGAF is the premier standard for that, so we would reference that to make sure that happened. There are a number of others here. I'll let you see them on the chart in terms of both industry standards for information sharing, IT operational standards for supply chain, finance, HR, marketing, functions that IT traditionally delivers a lot of value in, how IT operates itself, and then standards that are relevant to industry verticals. One I specifically want to call out is ITIL. It's of particular note because we want we want to take IT4IT's business approach and make sure that's built on a proven operational foundation. ITIL in particular is a very rich source of IT operational practices. So we've referenced those in IT4IT. We make sure that we note where such standards like ITIL and COBIT are relevant to implementing the IT4IT standard. And so if you're already familiar with ITIL and practice already as part of your IT operational discipline, you can use that as a roadmap to getting to know IT4IT and bringing that into the larger business model. If you take this, if you adopt the operating model and you do the implementation, you can do this from the standpoint of a vendor, you can do it from the standpoint of a consumer. And so you can ask, well, what does that mean? And for the value proposition for those kinds of organizations, if you're an organization that consumes IT, and of course Shell and ExxonMobil are big examples of that. And for those of you who are Open Group members, I would urge you to take a look at some of the case studies that are on the website, and we can make some of those available on the public website. That increase in efficiency gives you the ability to track the metrics of IT, cost, performance, the business value you're adding, and the risk, and use that and have a sound methodology for making your operational decisions and doing continuous improvement, and also reduce the cost of ownership for IT management tools in particular, so you can take that money out of IT operations and take the efficiency and apply it to actually creating stuff to deliver value for the business. If you're a software vendor, this allows you to, it's a guidepost for developing your integrated solutions. It's one where you know that there will be an industry target ready to consume some of that. And you can focus, instead of trying to, cover the whole waterfront, you can focus on the ways where you create competitive differentiation. Now, of course, people go out and they contract services for delivery of their IT function. And so if you're a software integrator or a consultancy, you've got this methodology that that is openly available, that you will have vendors lined up to provide the tools so that you can deliver, and also customers who will be able to understand what you're offering them. And so you can move beyond that traditional process consulting where you're trying to differentiate based on your particular approach to things. Tell your customers that you've got something where they can have some choice and work with you with confidence that there'll be multiple vendors able to participate in that. At the end, that gives you the ability to deliver a higher quality product at the lower cost of the customer. One of the things that everybody who's worked in IT4IT knows is it's all about the people, and getting skilled people is one of the biggest challenges for anybody who's in the IT world. And one of the things that you'll see coming out of the IT4IT program is a certification where you can identify the people who have shown their knowledge of the IT4IT standards, so that when you go out to get those individuals, that you'll know who's hit the books. And if you are an IT professional, of course, you can use that certification and the knowledge of IT4IT as a differentiator for you in developing your career. So this has been a kind of a whirlwind tour of IT4IT. I want to turn this back over to Jim at this point to take it forward and hear the rest of our presentation.
Great, thanks, Dave. And so our next presenter is Stuart Alexander. Stuart is a principal with Enterprise Architects International, and he'll be talking to IT4IT in practical use. So over to you, Stuart.
So hi, everybody. I'm currently in Amsterdam at the moment, and it's 12 o'clock midnight. As Jim mentioned, member of a company from here on, which is the Northern Hemisphere operating company for Enterprise Architects. Principal here, been working for the company for about a year. I'm a business architect. Previously, been a head of solutions at a software house, delivering IT solutions to business directly. So what I wanted to cover off today was some real-life observations and implementation considerations, some of the challenges around positioning IT4IT that you might experience and that we've observed, and really look at people and mindset, and let's say, some key attributes that you might be looking for in people that some of the concepts that IT4IT describes brings out. So just want to describe a bit of context first. What have we been doing with IT4IT? So we've been building strategies, operating models, and roadmaps for IT organizations over the past number of years, especially in the last year in the Northern Hemisphere. And this is our architecture thinking pattern. It's really our methodology for how we go about transformation blueprinting. And I just want to quickly speak to it and just as a consultancy describe how IT4IT kind of can accelerate our process a little bit. So we would always start our method by, from an architecture perspective, understanding the strategy, the motivation that's driving a business strategy, and interplaying that back and describing what's the business model that IT is trying to support. So there's some really good concepts in the IT4IT standard that kind of describe the conditions that a modern IT organization is facing. So the need to be brokering services. And then what sort of capabilities do we need to actually be able to do that? How do we build up our partnership models? What's our core value proposition? And I'll go through some of those in a bit. And it helps us, and we would then look to build out capability models. Dave mentioned the actual standard provides a quick start guide for actually modeling an operating model for IT. So it really accelerates our process as a consultancy to come in to be able to leverage some proven thinking. And then use that as a starting point to then augment as required with any specific business context that the client faces. So the world is changing. So we know organizations are sort of shifting from profit to purpose, that organizations are becoming flatter and sort of more networked, that staff are being empowered and trusted more, that businesses are looking to experiment and become much more transparent in their ways of operating. And if that's the case, then if business models are changing, then how does IT need to respond? And also, when everyone's expectations in the world of consuming IT are kind of very simple and easy to use mobile applications, and we're on the go, the expectations from outside the workplace enter the workplace. And so, how do we do this and execute on IT strategy, and at the same time supporting our existing estate? And just want to kind of frame that as a kind of a context point for what are the challenges of the IT organizations we've been dealing with. So they're characterized by trying to enable great customer experiences. So time to value is absolutely key around unlocking insight and value propositions from data, optimizing total cost of ownership, which is one of the key drivers of the IT4IT standard, and also developing new value networks. So being able to build new business models through partnerships and ecosystems. So the common challenges that we see where IT4IT actually kind of provides a great way of framing the conversation is, how do we move to DevOps ways of working? How do we transition new roles, skills, and mindsets? How do we shift to service broker models? And how do we govern that from an architectural perspective, ensuring that our services are secure by design? And how do we replay the internal investment and budgeting models? And IT4IT speaks to all of these things in the actual data model and functional model that we'll see in a minute. So let's dive in. From what I've just framed up, we know that enterprise IT should be bimodal, in that on the one hand, we need to be able to kind of maintain the long-term planning and existing stability of our IT investments. And at the same time, we know that we need to be able to respond to the business. And we need to be able to respond in a way that shows that we understand that we're ready as an IT organization to respond to deliver things quickly. One of the things that we'll see is that we've seen is that setting IT up as a provider, as an order taker, creates a relationship where the business is in a position where it's self-fulfilling, that you're not able to influence the strategy, and they can create longer-term complexity to control investments, where technology providers can go straight into business, and it creates complexities around governance. As you're trying to optimize your own IT estate and ways of managing IT, additional things come into the business landscape that are less manageable. So how do we move to a model, and the strategy portfolio value stream is absolutely key in this, that enables us to set up the IT operation as a partner into the business, where we're able to control the leadership role within disruption to actually frame a conversation with the wider ecosystem and technology providers. And it's key as well to be able to frame value internally to internal members of staff within the IT organization, so that everything that they're doing, they feel motivated, that what they're doing is delivering a business value. It's amazing when you go around IT organizations how you see that IT organizations that are performing can trace back the work that they're doing back to delivering value to the business. Getting that right is absolutely essential. So getting the strategy portfolio aligned to business value and being able to show how that is driving business strategy is a key thing to focus on. One of the things that's really important is positive engagement with the business. So the model itself, as a functional expression, comes to life through people. And there's this really nice concept in the IT4IT standards called a unique experience condition, which is in the request to fulfill value stream. And it talks about an engagement experience portal, which is really, as a consumer of an IT service, going in, viewing the service catalog, being able to view the knowledge base, get self-service support. What we've seen is that actually this experience engagement, this experience condition, needs to transcend the point of which service is being consumed into the entire engagement with IT as an organization. Because every time there's a connection point with IT, it can reinforce the value. How IT can support is aligned to the business strategy and supporting business. So the business capabilities themselves, whether it's when we're defining strategy, when we're supporting people, we really need to be clear about and invest in good communication skills that go over and above in a way that is going to give that true sense of partnership. When you look at the companies that, great technology companies out there today that are running really good internal models, the way that they end up communicating with their consumers through the experience is carefully curated and crafted, and it's a key ingredient in the way that IT needs to establish itself moving forward. What's in a name? So we've been meeting IT4IT engineers in organizations, and they've just got some free T-shirts, so they're very happy. And I've covered the name of the tool that they're using. It would have been able to see what they are using because they're kind of trying to evangelize it in their organization. But their job is to implement tools to enable their DevOps teams to be even leaner. And I think that one of the things to be careful of is that we see IT4IT as an overall integrated operating model, not just specifically tooling for application teams or development teams, that it goes all the way back from, into enterprise architecture and the way that we create views and the way we can communicate those views to policies. And there are some areas of influence that these people that we've been meeting don't necessarily have direct influence over. They do have influence very strongly over, whether it's automated build components or test tools or, automation engines. There could be a risk that IT4IT could start getting shoehorned, and I think it's really important that we're clear on the entire scope of what standards trying to communicate, rather than just kind of picking off kind of key areas. And what we see as well is that within IT organizations that are, let's say, more traditionally siloed, that there's an opportunity to use IT4IT as a catalyst to move towards a more integrated IT operating model. So there's obviously lots of large enterprises are on their journey to implement clouds, and we see that infrastructure organizations are kind of assuming the role of implementing cloud because it makes logical sense to move up the stack. And where we see there's a kind of an opportunity and also a risk is in the space in the middle, where the IT organization there could be, let's say, considered deviation of mandate, or kind of people starting to step into each other's toes. So, for instance, if you were to, I know this is a vendor agnostic standard, but if we look at capabilities that are out there in the marketplace today, there are some capabilities which would automate much of the detect to correct and with self-healing capability, that would automate and remove the need to provide all of this in a common capability, and provide the whole development and continuous delivery integration pipeline as standard. And I think that is, for the people that we saw on the other page, potentially, it's concerning because it kind of devalues what they're doing currently. So there's going to be a gap and a space and a conversation that needs to be had where mandate is discussed. And this is a really good standard and framework for actually for benchmarking and having a conversation about what does our future IT organization need to look like and how do we transition to that in a way that is most cost effective and where everyone is able to kind of find their role. We know that this is a process agnostic standard. Agility is a key system goal, and I want to just speak to the agility kind of aspect. That one of the key goals in agility is that you can cycle through your value stream as quickly as possible, so that if on day zero someone comes to you with a request, that how quickly can you get that request and actually deploy it into a production-like environment. So I've seen software companies or capabilities where line of business say, I'd like to build an application, and it can literally be deployed the next day in an environment into fully integrated with sitting in an abstraction layer. What we shouldn't be doing is modeling our organizational structure based on the value streams, because what it will do is discourage agility and lean ways of working. What we should be more to do is to say, how do we organize ourselves in a way that enables us to cycle as quickly as possible and have recursive loops. The actual life cycle status sometimes of a service could be considered an orthogonal concern, in the sense that you could take an idea and prototype it and pilot it and get it into a production-like environment very quickly, and then mature. And then so the teams that you set up to do that shouldn't be modeled directly on the detect to correct. So speaking of which, where's my MVP? So modeling, in the standard, we've got these value stream diagrams, which are effectively sort of cross-functional capability views where the different parts of the model come together and show how they interact. I've highlighted the build component, which potentially could come in. What's nice about this view is that it's showing that when you're designing a service and getting it out there, you really need to be considering the commercial aspect at the same time as the design aspect, as well as the sort of the technical and feasible considerations. And I think that that's a really important concept, that all three should be coming together at the same time, such that services that get built are desirable and feasible and viable as well. And what's important is that the models are tuned dependent upon the type of service that's coming in. So if there's a service that we need to be building or that we want to build that's got a very a kind of a heavy UI componentry to it, so whether that's a tool that a development community is going to use, then we might want to start by understanding what do they, from a desirability perspective, of how do our application engineers want to be consuming, what do they want from the services, and then maybe start looking at the same time as the technical and the feasibility aspects. What we do often see is that desirability or usability can be foregone sometimes, and a secondary thought. And it's really important that the structure of when you're assessing concepts and coming up with conceptual models for service blueprints, that we consider those three dimensions. So there are probably some new skills that we see needed, and this is kind of a quote from Gordon Ramsay, which is kind of a little bit Gordon Ramsay-ish, I guess. And it's really talking about the experience of around the core product, the stake. When we meet IT professionals that are wanting to work in an IT environment, one of their key frustrations is that they're unable to do their jobs in a way that they might be able to if they kind of, as well as they would as on the train home. Okay, so the experience that they're used to of freedom, of flexibility, of control, of using the great tools and playing around with great tools in a controlled enterprise environment is in a lockdown environment. Well, that doesn't mean to say that one of the questions is how do we control and implement enterprise level optionality and governance, and at the same time still make people feel comfortable and give them flexibility. And one of the great things that can be done is by really bringing experience design into the fore and trying to understand and design for the users, so that we're enabling them with the best possibility to build the services that are going to enable the business value. And for that, new mindsets and skill sets are needed to actually deliver those experiences. What we've covered, so just some concluding observations. Experience and value orientation is everything, and it drives motivation inside the system and also back into the business, and gives confidence to the business. Be clear about the entire scope of IT4IT. It is about providing the tools, but it's broader than just design and build. use it as a catalyst to build an integrated IT operating model that is fit for purpose in both modes